going down.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. You'll probably see me by noon tomorrow.
Okay. Well, hi everybody. Hiking today with Liz, but we are separating. She's continuing down to Lake Ann. You can see Lake Ann down there. It's a favorite spot of hers, and she's going to spend the night by herself. And I'm heading back to the car. We drove 2 cars. And you're like, well, why aren't you joining your wife? And the answer is, I wasn't invited. We haven't seen a soul. And the Esmeralda trailhead parking lot was half full. Feels like the olden days. And I think it was half full, and we haven't seen anybody because it's a Tuesday, number 1, and number 2, there's been air quality issues. But we woke up today and saw that it was moderate air quality. We're talking about the smoke from the wildfires, of course. So it's not a bluebird day by any means, but it's quite pleasant. It doesn't feel unhealthy, and I can't smell any wildfire smoke. So we wanted to do this today. As I've learned before, I think it's best to start filming when I'm at the top so that you don't have to hear all my heavy breathing, and I can pick some spots that might be of interest to you, hiking-wise, scenery-wise, and also we'll throw in a little bit of geology. Thanks for joining us. It is some intense looking serpentinite of the Ingalls. With Lake Ann below, down in the sun down there. This is some beautiful stuff. You know, you met Bob Miller with the previous 2 videos up in the North Cascades. One of Bob's running jokes is always getting the conversation back to the Ingalls Ophiolite. That's what this is. The serpentinite of the Ingalls tectonic complex, and Bob did his PhD on this Ingalls in the 1970s. And he says, people don't understand how significant and how unique the Ingalls Ophiolite is. Bob goes on and says, you know, I've been around the world. I've visited ophiolites in Oman and every other place, but it's tough to beat the Ingalls. And so there's even more reason now for me to appreciate the colors, the textures, the variety. It's not just all serpentinite, it's a true ophiolite sequence. It's a true ophiolite sequence. Sheeted dikes, gabbros, pillow basalts, serpentinized pillows, the whole thing. So, I don't think I've ever noticed this little spot right here with all this beautiful lichen, so. Wife. Well, Elizabeth is sitting down there at the lake. My goodness. How can you hike up here and not notice this rock? I guess people do it. Not give it a second thought. It's like, whatever, they're just rocks. Aren't there rocks like this everywhere? No. No. So, also thinking about my time last week with the North Cascades geologists, we're sitting around, well, not the campfire. Campfire's prohibited this summer. So we're sitting around the darkness, just sitting there. Can't see anybody, but we talked until, I don't know, 11:30 or something, and we got into Baja, BC. And remember, now it's the first time I'd really talked with those guys. First time I'd even met Bob and Stacia. And they have so much expertise and so much history mapping in the North Cascades. The conversation went to Baja, BC, and they were aware that I had done all these Baja, BC programs and was kind of talking about all these concepts. And to boil the conversation down, which I guess was a private conversation, but I'll make it slightly public. All 3 of those guys, Mike Eddy, Stacia Gordon, and Bob Miller, were not 100% sure Baja, BC is a thing, but also certainly open to the idea. Stacia in particular said there's just so much evidence now from different kinds of evidence that it's hard to ignore the concept that between 85 and 55 or between 90 and 60 or whatever numbers you want to pick, we need to move a lot of bedrock north from points further south. Station in particular has some Skagit gneiss details that match beautifully with some schists that are in Southern California. But you recall that there's granites that Merle Beck was studying, and Ted Irving, and fossils that Peter Ward were talking about, some Nanaimo zircons, but even with these experts who have deep knowledge of many rock units, including Bob Miller, who's spent almost 50 years up here in the Cascades, there's still significant questions. I bring all that up because we were talking about the Ingalls, because Bob is, as I mentioned, gifted at bringing the conversation back to the Ingalls all the time. It's kind of a running joke, but it's fun. And I guess Bob and I were kind of sharing that this Ingalls Ophiolite, 162 million years old now, pretty good date on the Ophiolite, 162, matches beautifully age-wise and rock-wise with the Josephine Ophiolite down in the Klamath Mountains of southern Oregon, even into northern California. And that this stuff is the same stuff as down there in the Klamaths, and therefore this stuff and that stuff used to be together somehow. No, it's not. And Mike Eddy, who doesn't talk a lot, but when he talks it's usually a very specific, kind of very interesting thing to say, said, so when's the movement on that? I said 162. He said, no, that's the rock, right? That's the age of the serpentinite, the actual age of the material that was on the ocean floor. Yeah, that's right, actually. Yeah, you're right, Mike. 162 for the age of this stuff. He's like, how about, do we know the age for the motion, for the movement? If this stuff was clearly moved north more than 500 miles, and the Josephine, its twin, was left south down there, are we really back in the Mesozoic time when that movement was happening? Are we even sure it's happening during the 90 to 60 million year time window, asks Mike. And since we continue to have a hard time finding the structures, the strike-slip faults that moved some of this stuff, a guy like Mike Eddy and the team and others might be able to find a way to not so much talk about the bedrock itself, but to find these structures and to get some creative ways to learn new things about when pieces of bedrock are moving north a state or two or more. Hadn't thought of it that way before. Thought I'd share it with you now. Pika. Pika. So, Professor, I'd like to go collect a piece of serpentinite from the Ingalls tectonic complex. Where can I go? Lake Ann. Well, what if I take a rock or two? I don't think it's going to be a problem. Well, I don't want to upset the... Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a problem. All that orange stuff over there is actually this stuff. But on many of those surfaces, there's been heavy amounts of oxidation. But it's all the same green rock. Doesn't look like it from here, does it? It's all the same green rock. Amazing. Okay. Heading back to the car, solo, heading south. Oh, we got some gray clouds rolling in, which is unexpected. Kind of nice not to be boiling on this south-facing slope this afternoon. I like this part about filming on the way down. I can't believe I didn't have that idea before, but it's helpful for a couple of reasons. You don't have to hear my heavy breathing, number one. I also know where some of the interesting spots are to film. For instance, this whole ridge, notice how that's all one kind of rock. That's all green serpentinite, just like the green stuff you saw up where we started the video. The reds are just places where that green rock has been altered. A lot of iron-rich rock. I don't totally understand why it's so red in certain places and not in others. I'm sure somebody might have an answer in the comments below. And hopefully this style of filming gives you a little feeling like you're out here with me on the trail, especially for those that live a long way from mountains like this or can no longer be up on these trails for whatever reason. Pretty tough to duplicate the experience, of course, but this might jog a memory or two that you've had in your younger days. And I'm getting up there now, come on. I'm 59, and this is a trail that we did many summers in a row with our boys when they were kind of moody teenagers. So there were lots of outbursts and unhappy people. But you know, it's a hour drive to the trailhead, and then it's about 3 hours of hiking up to get to this country here, and that was doable for a 12-year-old who didn't really want to do it, but they did it because they had no choice. But I mention that because it's been 12 or more years since I've been up here on this trail. And I'm feeling it a little bit today. So we don't get younger, do we? We get older, and what used to be just a casual prance up here with hands in my pockets and a full pack, now I need to concentrate a little bit more on what I'm doing. Just a little day pack, and I'm still not exactly casual out here. In fact, I'll throw this in if any of you kind of have this experience. My balance is starting to go on me. And I've started doing yoga in downtown Ellensburg. This episode of Nick from the Field brought to you by Indigo Yoga in downtown Ellensburg. You've got to love it. So I'm working on my balance at Indigo Yoga. I'm doing some weight training. I'm not sure what's going on, but it does feel like for the first time I'm having regular balance issues. And I don't typically share that kind of stuff, but perhaps some of you have experienced what I'm dealing with at the moment. I mean, I'm not exactly built like a ballerina to begin with. Look at that there. Oh yeah. Pretty dry. Okay, well, the final little descent here off the Lake Ann Trail, joining up with the Esmeralda Trail, hanging a left on it and heading back down to the trailhead, which is the big parking lot at the end of the line if you've come up the North Fork of the Teanaway before. You know, like, come on, where's the geology? Well, everything you see is still serpentinite. It's a lot of serpentinite, man. There's no shortage. And that's part of why Bob Miller feels like the Ingalls exotic terrain is underappreciated, because there's so much of it exposed, many different levels of it exposed in all this terrain here south of the Stewart Range. and heavily hiked. These trails, Longs Pass, Ingalls Lake, Ingalls Pass, Lake Ann, Fortune Peak, Esmeralda Basin Loop. It's all serpentinite. I don't know, is that Hawkins up ahead? So it's one thing to see some green rock. It's another to realize that there's a significant amount of it. It's a third thing to realize that it wasn't made here. It's another thing to realize that it's deep ocean rock. It's yet another thing to realize that it left the ocean, got accreted to the edge of North America, and then for sure got moved 500 miles to the north after it was added to North America, maybe more than that. If you're a regular of these programs, you've heard it many times. If you're new to what I do, you might have to pause that and go back and listen to what I just said a couple more times. That's a lot. That's a talk about storylines. Those are significant storylines for this grungy looking green rock that weathers to a burnt orange. Seems like I should finish that sentence, but I think I'll finish it this way. Period. I've been out of town the last week and a half, and we'll be on the road again doing some family stuff the next couple of weeks, so I'm not sure when the next one of these pop-up geology events will be. To clue you in if you're unaware, I've got this new concept. I kind of like it for field trips, as opposed to the traditional field trips which I've led forever, which is picking a date 4 months in advance, making some field guides, carpooling, going from stop to stop and filling up an entire Sunday. I'm wanting to try something different. This concept called pop-up geology, kind of a flash mob thing. And here's what I like about it. If I'm in the mood, I do it. If I decide, I announce it 48 hours in advance. And I only announce it if I know that the weather's going to be good, the air quality is going to be good, other variables are kind of looked at, and then I just kind of go for it. So I like the spontaneity of it. What I'm struggling with a little bit is, do I make sure that I do all pop-up geology videos where there is live streaming abilities? In other words, do I pick pop-up geology sites that have, parking for 50 cars, let's say, out in the middle of nowhere somewhere? Is it a flat enough area for people to set up their camp chairs? That seems like a tall order in of itself, because the whole idea of the pop-up thing is that I don't bring a chalkboard, I don't deliver handouts, I just simply use some sort of impressive view. And we're all looking at the view together. We're out there in real life. And the view has to have more than one set of interesting things about it. Could be geology, could be human history, could be Native American stuff, could be botany, I don't know. Something that I would know something about. And ideally, it's some kind of 360-degree view deal as well. So I pulled it off the first time last month, I think July 10th. Maybe you've seen it. It was at West Bar. It was a first try. It was 8 o'clock in the morning. And I think 75 people showed up from all over the place. And it was a great first try. But I'm trying to figure out where the next one should be and when. And I publicize it only on the YouTube channel here. and on this email list that I maintain. In other words, I don't think I'm publicizing it on Facebook and Instagram and things like that. Well, why would I do that? Or why wouldn't I do that? Well, this is going to sound pretentious, but there's been so much interest in this geology stuff here that I just don't want to deal with 300 people. And it's wonderful to see all the enthusiasm and the excitement and people driving from more than a state away to join us for an hour, which I find hard to believe, but at the same time it's been happening. So it's a spontaneous thing. It's also a way to keep the groups semi-small, I guess. I'm trying not to be, I don't know, super obtuse. Like, I'll meet you at the crack of dawn at some Forest Service road. You know, not that much, but something similar to that. Early morning I like. If it's on some kind of public land or Forest Service, whatever, I mean, I want to be out there early enough where we're not getting hassled by some official asking if we have a permit to congregate. Or I've already run into that, believe it or not, out in the middle of nowhere. So in true flash mob status, and I realize flash mobs are no longer hip, but you know the concept, don't you? Everybody kind of shows up, does something kind of fun, and then everybody scatters. Kind of the idea. Oh, here we are. So if you want to come up and enjoy this trail, I've just rejoined the Esmeralda Basin Trail, and I just came off of the Lake Ann Trail. So I'm heading on the Esmeralda Basin Trail back to the cars. I guess must be about like heading southeast right now. So that's my latest thoughts on the pop-up thing. I like the idea. I like being out there with folks. I don't know if we're ever going back to hosting lectures in a packed room on campus, to be honest. One of the health concerns. Two, again, sounds like I'm full of myself, but we were already kind of full in our auditorium before all this YouTube channel momentum. And now I'm starting to wonder, like, what do we do if we have 250 people that show up for a room that seats 120? So we'll see. Thanks for listening. No, you see what you get here? I'm trying to give you the full hiking experience, including hiking with the guy who just babbles. Have you been with a hiker who does that? They're just talking and talking and talking. If they are ahead of you, you can't even hear them. And you just throw in an occasional, uh-huh. Oh, is that so? Well, I'll be damned. I've got a backlog of videos. Another one with Randy. So I'll continue babbling, in other words. I got another one with Randy Lewis in the can. I've got something at Lodgepole Bluff with a drone pilot, Jason from Wenatchee. Haven't gotten to those yet, so I don't like it when things are kind of backed up. I feel like I want to do things, get it posted, and be done with it. So this part where all this stuff's kind of hanging, never wild about that idea. Up here at the North Fork of the Teanaway and the Esmeralda Basin that you're looking down now, there has to be a glacial history here. Do you see this rather graceful U-shaped valley here? I think most of you know that if you see that U-shaped valley, that means there was alpine ice, alpine glacial ice flowing down this valley, similar to many beautiful mountainous areas that have been glaciated in the past. So I'm confident of that, and yet I don't really know where the ice was coming from. Was it just a teeny tiny alpine glacier that formed here? Oh my God, I hear some thunder? Seriously? Yeah. I don't know, or if we do know, I haven't seen a good map to really visualize the extent of the ice up here in the Teanaway. It's always been kind of a struggle for me to visualize. I mean, the other thought is that at one time we had ice thick enough to fill each of these alpine valleys, like over at Lake Ann, and we had some ice flowing over some of these passes, but I don't know of that. I don't think it's crazy to say that, but I don't know of any evidence for that. Anyway, if you're looking for a little more geology than just the same old serpentinite stuff I've said a million times, then I guess there's some nice shots here in the haze of glaciated valley. As spectacular as Yosemite? Of course not. But it's a nice little valley and it's close to home. Feels like a home game here. Scoreboard. One of those afternoons where you feel like you're the only person on the planet. You know what I mean? The air is dead calm. You can hear a babbling brook a long way away. Every little chirp of a pika and a marmot, every little chippy. Very nice. back. I didn't see any thunder in the forecast. Serpentinite. Don't know, don't know, don't know, no idea, don't know, don't know, don't know, don't know. Serpentinite.